I think there's a big myth that still exists out there, which is that certain personalities are naturally better at public speaking than others. And that's just not true. I was really aware of what I didn't know. I was totally comfortable being a novice in things.
Mm.
And I saw it as this great adventure and this opportunity to just be really curious and to say yes to things and then learn on the job. I actually have every opportunity to grow as a communicator just like anybody else. And
Mm.
it's not driven by my personality and it's
Mm.
not driven by the level of introvert or extrovert I have. Like, I have the ability to get good at this.
You're listening to the Driven Introvert Podcast, the place to be for dreamers, doers, and entrepreneurs who are ready to birth the dreams, callings, and ideas the Lord has placed in their hearts. Do you sense that God is calling you to step out and do something new, but you're held back by fear and uncertainty? Do you struggle with believing that you can do great things because of your quiet, reserved, and introverted nature? Welcome here. I'm Remy Roy, your host and founder of shepacked.com. I'm an author, an entrepreneur, a creative, and a committed trier. I'm here to help you get unstuck and make progress on your God idea. Let's go. Hi, friend. So communication skills have always been at the top of my list when I think about areas for self-growth and development. And as an introvert, you can imagine this hasn't been easy for me. Contrary to what some people may believe, speaking is not my forte. It is not. It is just not my forte. I'm more of a writer than a speaker. I sometimes struggle with putting words together, knowing how to approach a thorny issue or a situation that requires me to think on my feet, like all of that. But I have to say I'm not where I used to be, and I'm determined to keep growing, which is why I'm so excited for this conversation. I'll be chatting with Nicole Smithee. She's a speaker, an author, and a coach, a very good one at that. Nicole is passionate about helping leaders thrive in their calling and providing personal and practical coaching and community for Christian female leaders. We had a great conversation about what it means to be a leader, how to grow and improve in your communication skills. We talked about why you should be driven by vision and not insecurity, which is something we introverts really need to hear and take to heart. And she has many practical insights for you if you're looking to become a better communicator, a public speaker, a leader, maybe at work, in your business and your personal projects, whatever it is you're doing. And we end the interview with some great rapid fire questions. You guys, this was a great conversation, so make sure you listen to the end. Let's go. All right. Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Hi, I'm so happy to be with you.
Oh my God, I am. I'm so happy that you said yes. I'm actually so glad that we met, really. I think it's providence that way, because I know that I was first aware of you from the Bible app.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I love the Bible app for just finding diverse voices, people from different backgrounds and bringing the gospel. I really love that. So that's the first time that I was aware of you. And after that, I believe that I attended one of your webinars. And
Yeah, that's right.
absolutely. And after that, you reached out to me, and I thought that was just so cool and so amazing of you, because you reached out and you were like, I want to know what you're doing. I want to talk to you. How can I support you? How can I help you? And that was just so great. I think it really shows your heart and your desire to really support women. And I'm really thankful for that. So I'm glad you're here today.
Well, same. And I feel like I have a new friend because of that. So
Oh,
thank
thank
you.
you.
I am
Absolutely.
so inspired by what you do. It resonates deeply with me as
Mm.
somebody who might come across more extroverted than I actually am. But just the way that you're resourcing women and uplifting women and encouraging women and creating a space where women can feel equipped and empowered to move forward with the
Mm-hmm.
dreams God's placed in their heart. That is powerful. We need spaces like this. So it really is an honor to be with you today. Thank you.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for saying that. I really do appreciate it. As a woman and somebody who's also a mom who is, I work from home just like you, and I have a business just like you, and you're trying to figure it out. I'm always curious to see how people get along. Like, how do you prioritize? What does your day look like and all that? And I just wanted to kind of ask you that. So how has this morning been for you before you got on this call? How was the morning for you? Tell me about that, Mom.
Oh man, it's always like, who knows from day to day. Yeah, so one of the things that is pretty routine, I think you'd
Mm.
hear me say this about my mornings, is I like to be the first one to get up,
Oh.
which I am a morning person by nature, but I just like to start my days where it's still quiet and I
Mm-hmm.
have my Bible and I have my journal and I spend some time in scripture and in prayer and just kind of quiet and still with
Mm-hmm.
coffee, of course, because I think that's
Yeah.
how I can get up that early before, it's like the calm before the storm.
Mm-hmm.
And then, then I get to wake my kiddo up and get going with the day. And she is so much fun. She's about to be 2 in a couple weeks. And so she
Oh,
is
that's
just like
fun.
a ball of joy and a lot of energy. And so
Yes.
once that gets going, it's like things are in motion. So
Mm-hmm.
I like to try to have that quiet time before because then it's not a free for all. There is a plan for the day. There is an
Yeah.
intention,
Yeah.
but I think we understand as moms and especially moms working from home, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's that plan can get interrupted a lot. And
Oh,
it's so
yes.
we
Absolutely.
got to hold the plan loosely.
Yeah.
So, but today has been a good day. And, this morning's been full of meetings and I can hear my daughter in the background. My mother-in-law is watching her,
Yeah.
in the
Oh,
other room.
such a
And
blessing.
it is a huge blessing to
Yeah.
have family and support like
Mm-hmm.
that. Not everybody has that. So I'm really grateful
Yeah.
too, but from day to day, it just looks different. And,
Yeah.
but to me, starting that way in the morning makes all the difference for me throughout the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the day.
I love that. I love that. My story is a little different because I think over the years I've been trying to, even before I became a mom, it was easier for me to do my quiet time in the mornings. But now I'm not a morning person by any stretch.
Right.
I am not a morning person, so it's really hard for me. It's been
Right.
harder now that I have a kid. So I've tried different things, and I've come to realize that the best time for me is actually at night before I go to
That's so
bed.
good.
Yeah. So in the mornings, I'll just, I'll pray on the go. I'll do things on the go because I have to, all of that. But at night, when it's, I'm done, with my work for the day, and I'm a night
Yeah.
owl, so it's easy for me to stay up and not feel like, oh, I gotta go to bed. That's where I
Yeah.
can really take the time and read my Bible and pray, and it's quiet, and he's gone to bed, and so it's we always kind of like go through different seasons and then we figure out what works best,
Yeah.
for that season. But I guess the most important thing is to stay connected, however we
Yeah.
can. Mm-hmm.
And I love that we have two different expressions of the same thing.
Yes,
Like
I
you got to
know.
find what works for you. And
Mm-hmm.
like what you said, from season to season, it's going to change. And I'm really uh, saddened sometimes by
Mm.
women feeling like they have to fit in this one size fits all when it
Yeah.
comes to their
Mm-hmm.
faith, when it comes to motherhood, when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
career. It's like, this is what it has to look like. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, who says? As
No.
long as you're prioritizing what matters most to you and your
Mm-hmm.
faith and you're growing, I'm not a night owl. So I'm like, I got
Yeah.
nothing to offer later in the
Yeah.
day. But I'm a morning person. So I'm leaning
Yeah.
into that in this season. And
Yeah.
maybe it'll look different,
Mm-hmm.
in another time. So
Yeah.
everybody's got to find what works for them and
Absolutely.
just do what they can and
Absolutely.
prioritize what matters. So I love that you're doing that.
Of course. Of course. All right. So let's get started. I want to start by exploring your journey a little bit.
Okay.
You started working in full-time ministry at 19. I think
Yeah.
that's quite impressive to me because at 19, I was still very confused. Very confused. I had no
So was
idea.
I.
All right, we'll talk about that. But I see the Nicole before me today. You're very eloquent. You're engaging. You're a great communicator. I mean, I would listen to you. I've listened to so many of your messages, your podcasts, and I'm like, how do the words come so easily to her? Like how? But take me back to you at 19, full-time staff at a church in LA. I'm thinking that position must have come with maybe something that required you to speak or lead in some capacity. And of course, that requires communication skills. How did you do on that job in that capacity? Like, what was your mental space at that time, at that age, in that position? Did it feel like it was right for you? Did it feel like round peg in a round hole? Or was there like some friction in trying to figure out where you belonged?
Yeah. Well, I felt really strongly that that was the right spot for me to be in.
Mm,
And without taking too much time in the podcast, there was just a series of events that even led me to prayerfully saying, God, if there was a job being offered at the church, I'm going to take it, which is not why I ended up in LA to begin with. I was acting, I was going to acting school.
mm,
That was my vision for my life,
yeah.
was pursuing that career. But being a part of the local church that I came on staff on really reawakened within me a desire for ministry in a local church context, to be a part of that and to contribute and give where I could, which did lead to an opportunity. And when I was just serving there with the spare time that I had, and I had a lot of it as a 19-year-old, I always think, like, if you have a lot of time, keep yourself busy, especially at certain ages, and then it'll keep you out of trouble. So I was serving and volunteering, and that's when I got asked to come on staff. The role that I started at when I was 19 was an administrative assistant to one of the associate pastors. And then over the next almost 15 years in LA before moving to New York, I just kind of did everything in church life. And the last 2 years was in executive leadership and overseeing the staff and preaching and teaching on a regular basis. And that at 19, I didn't have any of that experience. And I wasn't proficient in anything that should have landed me the job. Like, I laugh because I'm like, we got way better over the years at hiring, and I kind of just flew under the radar before we had those, procedures and policies and standards in place, because I'd never had a real job. I was out of high school. I was at acting school, teaching acting classes. And I didn't know how to use Outlook. I didn't know what Excel was. I didn't know any of the things that you should know. But I said yes. And I think I was just at a place where I was young. And because of that, I was really aware of what I didn't know. I was totally comfortable being a novice in things. And I saw it as this great adventure and this opportunity to just be really curious and to say yes to things and then learn on the job and ask when I needed help. But I was so eager to learn and so excited to be in that space that I wasn't afraid, even though I didn't have a skill set for the job. I was eager. I was filled with a lot of hope and a lot of vision. And I think that that's a real sweet spot that is hard to get later on in life, because the older you get, the more aware you are of what failure could really feel like. And you become more and more uncomfortable with being a novice at things. And so I think I've tried to remember that in different seasons, to be like, actually, it's good to push myself out of my comfort zone. Being a novice in certain things is actually a really great spot for growth. And having the desire to learn and being curious can serve you really well in any season, and it can keep you from being stagnant and stuck. It'll keep you moving forward and new opportunities emerging for you to make an impact, as well as to continue to grow as a leader. So I think I had that working for me when I started at 19, but in terms of skill set, definitely didn't have it. And I was really grateful to be in an environment that gave me a lot of grace and believed in me. And I felt that. And that made all the difference for me, especially in my early years and my formative years in just ministry and leadership and life,
Gosh, I love that. And I think at this point, I remember where I was at that time. I'm telling you, like, gosh, I was so confused. And I remember that. And I wish I had, I'm grateful for my journey, but I wish I had maybe the mindset that you had then, because you knew what you didn't know, or maybe you didn't even know, but you just knew that you were excited to learn, you were eager to learn, you wanted to grow, and you were okay with that. You were not afraid to say, this is where I am. And I wish I had been like that, because I felt like I had desires for, like, okay, I want to learn stuff, but the fear of just failing, the fear of, like, I know that I'm not where I need to be for this, so I'm just not gonna try, because it feels too hard to go from where I am to where I want to be. And that's just right off the bat, I'm like, that speaks to me. And I really hope that encourages any young woman out there who is maybe getting started, to know that don't let fear hold you back from just taking those steps. You don't have to know it. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be what you need to be at this time. Just be willing to learn and to grow. And it really ties into just some of the things I really want to talk about here in terms of leadership and seeing yourself that way. But we'll get to that. But so now you've had over 20 years of ministry and business experience. You're a communicator, you're a Bible teacher, a coach. And I love that, by the way. We're going to talk about that. You have a coaching program that you do called Lead with Love, where you provide coaching for Christian female leaders. And I'm curious, what do you think is the learning gap that needs to be filled for this demographic? Why are you passionate about leadership and communication coaching for women? Why do you think it's crucial for us to do this? Hi, friend. Are you enjoying the podcast? May I ask you a favor? Please take a moment to leave a review of the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews are very important and help other people find the Driven Introvert podcast. I'd really appreciate if you could rate the show and also leave a written review. You can review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Now back to the podcast.
Yeah, well, I think that there is always a leadership learning gap for everybody. And I think that part of the problem and when we get stuck and we stop growing is because we stop realizing that we always have a gap. Like, we're never going to arrive at a place where it's like, I got it. Now we can even get to expert status with certain things. And I use that status word, lightly, but it doesn't mean that we have learned everything we can learn. There's always room to grow. I really believe that. So I think that as long as there are leaders, then we are going to need support. We're going to need coaching. We're going to need development because there's always more room to grow when it comes to leadership, when it comes to communication, when it comes to really any skill that you're passionate about in life that you want to use and leverage to make an impact. Now, specific for females, I think we run into a couple challenges that I've experienced in my own life that I think is a very common experience for women today. And the first one is that you're sometimes in spaces where, I hate to say it, but you're not afforded the same opportunities for leadership development and growth that the men are in your company or your industry or your sphere of influence. And sometimes it's not as pronounced and as like just blatantly being said. I feel like we've moved beyond that. But a lot of times the culture is still predominantly male. The opportunities, it's like, hey, we're going to go to a conference, but we don't have room for everybody. So the guys are just going to go, or we're going to go to lunch and it just feels like this is what the guys are going to go do. Or, there's just a lot of subtle ways, even the way like just the social hierarchy in certain environments work that make it harder for women, not impossible, but there is those extra steps that women have to take if they want to grow. Sometimes they have to seek it out themselves. Sometimes they have to go beyond what their industry or I guess their place of employment or the organization is offering. Sometimes it has to come out of their own paycheck, those learnings, because it's not something that is provided for within their place of employment or their place of even learning. And so that's hard for women. And I think that's an unnecessary hurdle, but it is where we are today. And so we need to create spaces where women can be themselves, they can be seen, and they can have the opportunities to grow and develop so that they can maximize their leadership potential, regardless of whatever industry or space they're in. We also have women struggling with other responsibilities beyond just whatever is their 9 to 5, call it what it is, or their job, whether that's ministry, business, entrepreneurship, nonprofit world, wherever they're called to lead in, whatever those spaces are. For most women at different points in their life, not everybody, but most women are going to perhaps get married. A lot of them are going to have kids, and you're going to enter into different seasons where once you get home, it's not like you're done working. You just shift hats, shift gears, and you have children, you have a spouse, you have this family unit that that matters to you and that you have to take care of, and other responsibilities. And that's beyond passions. And maybe if you have hobbies, that's another thing. But I talked to a lot of women at Season of Life and they're like, my hobby is taking a shower. That's not a hobby. That's survival, right? But women have so much on their plates that it's hard for them to find the time to continue to invest in their development as leaders, their knowledge, their growth, their understanding, how they can contextualize new skills and increase their capacity right where they're called to lead. So because women have limited opportunity and they have limited time, I'm really passionate about making sure that those don't become things that stop women from actually continuing to grow. Like, they're hurdles, but they don't need to put leadership development or communication coaching or whatever. Those are the areas for me that I'm passionate about. But just development for women doesn't need to be put on the back burner just because you become a mom, just because you're in an industry that doesn't really have a lot of space or voice for women. I feel like if God's put you in those spaces, there's going to be a way for you to be able to thrive in it. But it takes some nuance, it takes some intentionality. And that's what I'm really passionate about helping women with.
I love that. I love that. That is so true. That is so true. Because there's so many things that women have to overcome as hurdles, which I would say is not unfair, but it is what it is. But like you said, it's changing a little bit, but there's still a long way to go. So let's think about from a perspective of a woman who has sort of internalized the way things are. Like women are not afforded a lot of opportunities. The spaces where they really want to play and work in, it's not easy to get in, it's not easy to thrive. And they have sort of internalized that and like, well, maybe it's not meant for me. Mm-hmm. Maybe I really don't have what it takes. That's why these people are going off and doing their, boys club things. Like, how do you encourage a woman like that? It's almost as if the spirit has been broken because you've seen over and over again how difficult it is. And to even step out of that mindset to say, okay, now I want to go learn something. Now I want to feel this learning gap. It's like a stretch. Like, how do you even encourage somebody like that?
Yeah, I think, well, a few things. One, if you're in that space, I'm so sorry that you're in that space. That didn't happen overnight. Usually that doesn't happen with one thing. It's usually a compounded effect of things that can cause us to begin to just dream a little bit smaller and play it safe a little bit more and more. And if that's your reality listening to this, I feel for you. I'm sorry. I know what it's like to be in those spaces. And I also know what it's like to break through those spaces. For me, my faith is like such a huge part of that. So I think being able to look through scripture, look at the gospel narrative for me, and I see a God who empowers me, who loves me, who's called and equipped me, and that his word has the final say in my life. Now that might sound cliche, that might sound naive. I just believe it. And that's where faith comes into play. Like at some point we have to choose who writes our story. Who are we going to believe? And I guess I'm just kind of at the place in my life after enough hurt to be like, I'm not going to let industry or people who don't really know me and know what I'm capable of, or societal norms set the standard for what I can and can't do. Like they didn't create me. God did. They don't have a plan for my life. God does. So I'm gonna turn there. And then I think the next thing to do is to have discernment and to understand, am I somebody who is going to disrupt and create change right where I am? Or am I called to move on and move out and move on somewhere else where I know that I'm going to be afforded more opportunity? And it's different for every woman. Some women, I really feel like they have such a call and it's hard, but they're like, I'm going to pioneer here. I'm going to disrupt here and I'm going to do it. And it's going to be slow, incremental changes. A lot of things are going to be unfair, but I feel like I can be a change agent here. And then there's other women who say, you know what, this is not the space for me. And that's not the role that I am meant to fill here. I'm going to go somewhere where my gifts and talents right today are seen, and there's opportunity for me to use them to make impact. And I think there has to be discernment to know which is which. Because some people are called to stay and some people are called to go. And that's where you can't, Instagram's not going to be able to tell you. And somebody else's journey isn't going to confirm. You need to hear from the voice of God. You need to pay attention to the people who are for you and love you, who speak truth, and ask and invite that wise counsel, and then make a decision. And then know what your wins are. Like, what does success look like in each of those kinds of spaces? Know what God's called you to. And as long as you're moving the needle forward there, then that's the job well done that you're looking for.
Nicole, I love those insights. Really leaning into your faith and knowing that God's word empowers you and you have to choose, who you're going to believe, and also discernment and knowing if it's time to pivot, go somewhere else, or keep going with where you are. That's insightful. Thank you for sharing those. Let's talk about leadership. Right. So it's leadership and communication coaching. I love that. But what does it mean to be a leader? So for me, before we started ShePact, I never thought of myself as a leader. It's not even something that has ever been in my vocabulary. I never thought about it. I remember thinking, for me, the word leader painted somebody who is really bold and very charismatic and expert, somebody who has actual followers, like not just social media followers, but actual people in your space that you're pouring into, that are listening to you so eagerly, kind of like Jesus, right? So that's what I thought. So I never thought of myself as a leader in any capacity. And I'm reminded of a time where I think it was on my second job at the time. I was working for this management consulting company and I was in the communications department. And there was it was just my boss and I in that department. And he would usually attend these board meetings, right? But at this time, I think he was on vacation. For some reason, I had to attend that meeting, and the CEO actually called for me to come. And I thought, oh my God, I don't want to do that. Like, this is a board meeting. I don't want to do that, and so I thought, okay, I'm just going to go take notes. That's what they need me to do. I'll take notes, I'll turn it over and I'll be good. So I went into that meeting and I tried to really be diligent at taking notes, because sometimes my mind wanders, because I'm like, these are like, I like, nobody needs me here. So but I tried to listen and take notes. And I think halfway through, I forget what they were discussing. And the CEO turned to me and he said, so Remy, what do you think? And I just about fainted, because I felt, oh my God, like what? Like I don't even know if I said words, if it made sense. I had no idea. And thinking about it now, I'm like, I think I did myself a disservice in not being able to think of myself as even somebody that had something to offer, somebody that had something to say that people would want to listen to. And I feel like if I had maybe earlier on in my life, in my career, or just my journey, if I had been very intentional about that, maybe I would have been strategic in the way that I learned, in the way that I approached my self-development and all of that. So I just want to talk about leadership. What does it mean to be a leader? What is the definition of a leader in concrete terms?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I know it's a simple one, but it's a really great one, that the way we answer it really determines a lot for us when it comes to what we're aiming for leadership and what development looks like. So it's a great, great question. I think in its simplest form for me, as I said, for me, leadership is influence with a positive impact. And that piece is important to me. Now, I know that if I'm really talking about truly, like, what is the dictionary answer here, it's really going to, the emphasis going to be influence. You influence people and you leverage your influence to move them from one position to another, from one place to another. But for me, without that positive impact, it's not worth it. In fact, it's dangerous. And I think you see that all the time. And so I think and this is again, like my faith speaking here, but to me, it's not just about my influence. It's about how can I influence people in a way that has a positive impact in their lives, in the lives of communities, in the lives of organizations, in the lives of generation, like thinking that way of what is positive impact. And that's, I think, really where a leader wants to get to. I think leadership in its purest form is never really self-seeking. I think it's actually quite serving, and it's thinking about legacy at the end of the day. And I think a lot of leaders get to that place, especially later in life, where it's like, you know what, my goals and ambitions are actually more about who am I pouring into?
Yeah.
What's the investment? What am I leaving behind? How did I make somebody feel better? How did I help somebody in tangible ways? How did I awaken people to their potential? You know, you talked about not seeing yourself as a leader for quite a long time, which is really ironic, because I'm sitting here because I'm like, that's one of the first ways I would describe you, is as a leader and as a good leader. You know what I'm saying? Isn't that funny how I feel like sometimes we end up having the worst self-talk about the places that we were meant to have greatest impact in God's kingdom. But I'll never forget the day that I first was told I was a leader. I was about 19 or 20. I was working at the church, but I was also serving in youth ministry. And one of the best leaders that I ever sat under and got to learn from was the youth pastor at the time. And he had a small group of us who were serving and volunteering in like some kind of core capacities. He wanted to go through a John Maxwell book with us, which I'd never heard of John Maxwell before. Now, okay, people are laughing at me and going, yeah, he's written a lot of leadership books, but I was 19, 20 at the time, never heard of that. And we were going through the book together. And at some point, I think we were just dialoguing or whatever. And Jared, his name was Jared Dowd, he looked right at me and he said, well, Nicole, that's because you're a leader. You're a leader. And he just went on. It was very casual. And then we kept talking. But it was like a light bulb went on inside of me. And I was like, whoa. And I remember going home and looking in the mirror, and I didn't just see Nicole. I saw Nicole, a leader. And ever since that moment, it was a shift. I never not saw a leader. I looked in the mirror and I always saw a leader. Even on my worst days, even when I felt like I was failing miserably, I still saw a leader. And we need people like that in our world. I think when you're asking me what a leader is, it's Jared Dowd in sitting with a small group of young people who don't know what they're doing yet with their life saying, you're a leader. That's leadership with a positive impact. And we all get to be that regardless of our personality, whether we're extroverted, introverted, however we test on the Enneagram, has nothing to do with the potential to influence people towards a positive impact.
Gosh, that's so powerful. That is so powerful. It's a shift. It's a shift when you really begin to see yourself in that new light, because it influences everything else you do. And that's certainly been my experience. To be honest with you, I guess the first time that I started to see myself this way was just last year. Last year, 2023, was the first time that I started to see, even though I've been doing things that I feel like has had like some sort of influence on people. I've done writing coaching, I've written books, I've taught classes, but I still didn't see myself that way, because there's no one like always calling my name and wanting to be in my space. There's no one like, well, apologies to the few people following me at that time, but there's no one following me like seriously on social media and paying attention to my every word. So we use those metrics, those sort of vanity metrics to kind of like decipher, are we making impact, are we having an influence, are we influencers, the way it is in the current landscape. And I think all of that is just distracts from the real thing. It distracts from the real work that we should be doing and how we need to sort of grow in that sense of being a leader. That's really insightful. I know that you said you're an introvert, right? And you said you would appear more extroverted, and I get that, because I mean, you're very eloquent and all of that. I'm like, okay. So for introverts, I feel like many introverts, except they've had like years of practice, and experience doing this, many introverts will probably not to refer to themselves as natural speakers or communicators, right? Because we're more reserved, we like to observe. And even when we do say stuff, we don't want to take over the whole room and just like have everybody listen to us and all that. Is there a mindset shift that's needed to help maybe more reserved and reticent communicators be more, I guess, confident and assertive? Because I'm thinking about it. I'm like, if I want to communicate, I want people to listen, right? That's the goal of it. I want them to hear me, hear my heart, not just listen to me, but hear me, hear my heart. And hopefully the information I'm passing across does what it's supposed to do. So how is there a mindset shift that can help us go from the reserved, I don't know if I'm saying this right, I don't know if it's coming across well, to be confident and assertive and really getting our message heard?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a big myth that still exists out there, which is that certain personalities are naturally better at public speaking than others.
Absolutely.
And that's just not true. There are some people who might more naturally gifted, but that's not personality. You can be an extreme introvert and a great communicator and actually have some naturally gifting towards it. You can be extremely extroverted and not a great communicator. You can be extremely extroverted and not have that natural gifting. So even though you're really comfortable in front of people, you don't have the skills or the intuition. And sometimes you have to learn some of that judgment along the way of what makes for a good communicator. So we have to separate personality from the gift of being able to communicate, and then the skill of being able to communicate. It's funny because there's a whole lot of skills in life that we're like, it takes practice, it takes coaching, it takes time, and it takes over time that becomes expertise. But when it comes to public speaking and communicating, we tend to almost have this idea of like, you either have it or you don't. Like you're either good at it or you're not. And it's like, no, it's actually a developed skill just like anything else. So I say that because I think that's helpful too for the person who wants to kind of excuse themselves from the possibility of being good because they're afraid. They're like, no, it's not for me. It's like, well, actually, depending on what you're called to, it very well could be the seat you've got to sit in. And that's okay. Even if you don't feel comfortable in it today, it's a skill that you can develop and learn. And I think what helps people find their confidence once they can get over those myths and go, okay, I actually have every opportunity to grow as a communicator just like anybody else. And it's not driven by my personality. And it's not driven by the level of introvert or extrovert I have. Like I have the ability to get good at this, is to be able to understand why you're communicating in the first place. I think if people can understand what their message is, who they're really speaking to, and why it deeply matters, then when you speak, it's less about you and it's more about the mission, the big why. And it kind of helps us get over ourselves a little bit so
Yeah,
that we
that
can
does.
grow and get out of our
Mm-hmm.
comfort zone. So if
Mm-hmm.
it's just about how you feel while you're speaking, that's always going to be limiting. We want to be aware of those things. We want to tap into them. And coaching, I always ask people, how'd you feel after that? Because there's some things that we discover in that process about ourselves. So I'm not saying that we aren't self-aware, but it's really the point of communicating is not because you're at the center of the communication. The point of communicating is there's a message that needs to be heard. And that message can have great impact. And because you care enough about what that impact could be, that fuels you and drives you to speak that message, even if that draws you out of your comfort zone. I think when you know your why, then it really does impact your ability to show up with confidence. Certainly coaching is going to help with that. Experience is going to help that. Nobody starts out as a great communicator. So you're going to try, and there's going to be some things you discover in that process. And there's probably going to be things that you go, I'm never going to do that again. That's great. That's part of growing as a communicator. But when you know your why, it really can fuel you beyond fear into what is uncomfortable, but that's where we grow and that's where we learn. And over time, figure out what our voice is and how a message can resonate with people and lead them to change.
Gosh, I love that. You mentioned personality, gift, and skills, and all of those are different. Like, irrespective of your personality, you can actually be a gifted and a skilled communicator. And tell me, let's look at the difference between being gifted and being skilled.
Well, I think there are I do believe that God gives us some natural gifting. It's still up to us to develop it. So we should never try to build anything on natural gifting. Natural gifting is an inclination of what we can continue to develop, because we know that if we focus on that area, that strength is going to be multiplied the effort of that, right? There's going to be some great output there and outcome. But I do think that skill is something that anybody can learn. So, for example, I've talked to some people who are phenomenal communicators. I mean, I'm not exaggerating that. They're great communicators. And they did not start out ever wanting to speak in front of people. They were terrified. They hated it. They were like, please keep me behind the scenes. Please keep me doing other things. I don't want to be here. And now they are not only extremely confident, but they're incredibly effective as communicators. And no one would know. Like if you were to hear them say that, you'd be like, you're lying. There's no way, because you're so good at this, right? My story is that I've always enjoyed speaking in front of people. That doesn't mean I've always been good at it, but I've always been bent that way. When I was a kid and there was, book reports and it was time to do the oral book report and you just had to speak in front of the classroom about that, I was like, sweet, this is great. I love this. I was so excited. I'm like, this is going to be the easiest A, right? I loved it. Now, the majority of the kids in the room were squirming. They hated it. They didn't like that. I think that those kind of things that you're naturally drawn to, even at a young age, are kind of indicators of, hey, this might be a God-given gift here. It doesn't mean that it is developed. It's still in its pretty raw phase, but you have an opportunity to lean into that. And that could be a great tool in God's kingdom, and not just a tool in God's kingdom, but a great source of delight and joy for you as you use it to serve others.
I love that. There's this thing I used to tell my friend, like, I feel like some people, the distance from their head to their mouth is like really short. I feel like those are the gifted speakers. Like they think it's so easy for them to just say it and it makes sense. Like it comes out coherent. And I'm the kind of person, like, it's a whole, like, it's a long highway of just driving now. Am I going to figure it out? Am I going to say it right? Is it going to come out at all? Try to figure it out. But I love that. It encourages me to know that I can get better. It can encourage me, and I hope it encourages everyone listening. If you are in a position right now, you feel like, gosh, I don't like to do this. Maybe at school and you have to do the presentations, or at work and you have to, give those speeches or whatever. And you're like, I don't think I can do it. To know that you can actually learn and grow, even if you're not naturally gifted, you can do it.
Yeah. And a lot of places, especially in leadership, whether or not it's behind the scenes, there's going to be moments where that's required of you. It's just a skill set you're going to need to have. It's not just for, comedians and preachers. Like there's a whole lot of spaces where you're going to need to be in front of people and own your voice and know why you're there and know what you can give and how you can serve people with your messaging. So I think it's a skill for a lot of people, even though we try to avoid it. It really does go hand in hand with leadership in a lot of different spaces. And, one other thing, if I could add, is I think we also have this false belief that the better you are at something, the less you have to prepare. And that's not true.
Absolutely.
So
No, I feel that.
preparation is not an indicator that you are not good at something. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The better you are at your preparation, knowing how you can best prepare, knowing what you're trying to achieve, and continue to just be really great at preparation, the stronger you're going to be as a communicator. I mean, we would never look at anything like, we wouldn't look at an NBA player and go, oh man, they have to practice, so they're not great. In fact, we go, oh, I know why they practice the way that
That's
they
a
do,
great example.
because they are great. And so I think the same is true when it comes to communication and public speaking. I think, we like, oh, you see that friend, they just off the cuff, they just said that they were so good, or I bet they went up and they preached that sermon and all they had was like, they didn't have any notes, or they just had scribbled on a napkin.
Yeah.
I mean, those are like urban legends in our minds that we really over time overemphasize. It's like, yeah, there's people on the fringes who might get away with doing that sometimes, but I promise you, the majority of speakers, the really great ones that you admire, they prep a lot and they put in a lot of the work, and they just know what kind of prep works for them, and it serves them very well. So just because you need to prepare doesn't mean, it's not any indicator of your skill set. It's actually just a necessity to get better.
I love that. And I was going to ask that question, but you already answered it. That is one of the things I feel like we get wrong the most about communication, right? And I think the podcast, I think it must have been episode 2 and 3 that I had with Coach Anna McCoy. We talked about this, and she talked about preparation. And for anyone listening, if you want to kind of like just also get a different perspective, it's the same thing, she said, but just with different words. You can check that out. Is episode 2 and 3.
And it's very good. If I could add a little, I really enjoyed that interview a lot. Yes.
Yeah, it was a great time. And I think I also shared my story there of some of the different times in my life where I knew that I had to prepare, because that was all I had. I wasn't like the other kids who would just come and just, do the thing. And it helped me grow, it helped me grow in speaking in that place. It was for class, and it made all the difference. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so let's provide some practical tips and insights, right? One of the things I'm really passionate about is supporting women who are like me. And I say like me because I've talked a lot on this podcast about all of my sort of insecurities and fears and lack of confidence and self-esteem and all of that. And I like to support women who have a similar experience, because I feel that I lived through it. I went through it. It is not an exciting thing to feel defeated all the time, to feel like, gosh, you're just not able to rise up to the occasion when you really want to, but you feel like you cannot. So I really love to support women, and I have conversations, mostly on Instagram, in the comments, especially in the DMs, with women who are like just telling me their stories, telling me the things that they want to learn, how they want to grow, and all of that. And I want to share some of them here, and hopefully you can give some very whatever, maybe general insight or practical advice that you can begin to think about. So the first one, this lady said, my dream is building confidence. I want to improve my leadership skills. I want to dive deeper into the knowledge I already have. I want to network better, and I want to learn to give confident speeches and presentations. I know that she works in corporate, so she's really wanting to grow in that capacity. But I feel like in her mind, her personality, like, I'm not great at all these things, but I want to learn. I want to be better. How can you encourage her?
Yeah. Well, me too. That list sounded really great.
I know.
I loved it. There's a lot of different areas that you've already identified. And I think that's a really great starting point. I feel like it's easy for all of us, to look at the areas that we want to grow in, and it almost feel like overwhelming. Like, there's so many areas. So I want to get good at this and this and this. So I'm not good enough. It's almost like it just becomes this disqualifier because it's so much. So I would really encourage people who resonate with that comment, which I think a lot of us do, is to really try to identify a few key areas that you would like to grow. And not from a place of, because I'm bad at this, because I'm not this, but from a place of, I know that I need these skills because it's necessary for me. It's going to be really or it's at least going to be very helpful for me for the spaces that God's called me to. So you're driven not by insecurity, but you're driven by vision. And I think being able to differentiate between those two is really helpful, because if we're driven by insecurity, then we're never going to get enough skill. We're never going to get enough tools. We're never going to get enough resource. Because we're never going to measure up. But when we're driven by vision, then we kind of get to start to see strategically how the things that we want to learn and grow in, actually the pieces that they play in that great puzzle towards us actually walking out our either God-given assignment in a season or our calling for our life. So I would definitely encourage that. And then once you've identified those few areas, you can't do everything at once. So then it's being able to go, okay, what is most important for those next steps? Like right now where I'm at, what would be like if I were to grow in this one area, it would have the most, it would produce the most results. I would feel the most immediate change across different things. So maybe it would be, maybe you go, okay, right now that's actually public speaking for me. Okay, great. So then now you create a game plan for how you're going to make that growth opportunity a reality for you. It might look like coaching. It might look like some workshops. It might look like somebody that you admire who's good at and saying, hey, the next couple times I lead a meeting, can I get feedback from you, right? So you can create a plan, and it's going to look different for everybody based on your resources and the time you have to give, but you're going to create a plan around it that's feasible, that's measurable, that works with the flow of just your life. And then you keep going at it, right? And so then you find okay, I'm working on this area. I'm leveling up here. Okay, here's another area I'd like to invest in now. And you kind of, you take away the insecurity. I think you take away the power of insecurity too when you go through this exercise, if it's driven by vision. Because instead of it being like, this is where I don't measure up, it's like, oh, wow, now I'm driven by curiosity. This is where I get to grow. This is where I get to learn. I think being able to do that allows us to have the strategy and allows us to have just the confidence to even begin to seek out those opportunities for growth. I also want to pause and say that I feel like men do this a lot easier in general, with a lot less insecurity around it.
Yeah.
Like for some reason, guys are like, oh yeah, I'm going to grow in this area. And they like have they will ask for it in the workplace. They'll get around certain people. They will start going to lunch with somebody. They'll attend the conferences. They'll pay for the seminar because it's part of how they grow in their career. And so it doesn't feel like it's driven by insecurity. It feels like driven by, oh, you're just being smart about your career, dude. Like, great, good for you.
Yeah, that's so
So for some reason, it tends to be a little bit more for women to even ask and to seek out these opportunities. We tend to approach it, I think, with less confidence in general. And that's a whole other podcast for us to dissect why.
Yeah.
But I think that it's good for us to be aware of like, wait a minute, like look around. There's probably a lot of men in your same profession who have no problem asking for feedback, no problem raising their hand to say, can I come to this meeting too? Like it's just seen as like confidence and assertive, and look at them. They're a star player. They're wanting to grow and achieve. So for you as a woman, why would it be any different?
I love that. Two things that you've said that really catches my attention here is don't be driven by insecurity, be driven by vision. I think it's a powerful shift because it really empowers you to, like, it's possible for you to feel like you're going after something, but you're going after it with your shoulders like slumped, like, oh yeah, I don't even know if I'm going to make it, but if you're driven by vision, it strengthens you. Like you see it from a different perspective. You're excited, like you said, to do it. You don't see it as, oh, I'm not good enough, but I really want to grow in this area. And that propels you. And then having a plan, I think it's amazing how many times we feel like we want to do something. We know it at the back of our heads that we want to grow in this area, but there's no plan. Like we're never able to get to the point where we really create a plan and go after it. And I think that's a huge mindset shift to see that, okay, I want to do something. I have to create a plan so that I can actually make it happen, So yeah, that's really insightful. I hope that really encourages her, and I'm going to send this podcast to her so that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that'd be very helpful, so she knows that you spoke to her directly. Thank you for that. Okay, so the second one I want to share is she says, I'm a shy introvert. When I'm called to speak or introduce myself in a meeting or gathering, I literally freeze, and you can sense I'm in panic mode. I shy away from being at the forefront of anything. This was me many years ago. So how would you encourage her?
Yeah. I appreciate that you said that. Like, you're not alone. A lot of people feel this way. And I think if we can normalize it, because sometimes we can get in our head like, oh, nobody feels it as like, as
Yeah, it's
bad as
just
we do
me.
right now. And
Mhm.
it's, and I think it can become this like self detrimental, like perpetuating thought in our mind
Yes.
then. And it's like we kind of get stuck in the cycle of like, oh, I hate
Mhm.
it, I hate it, I hate it. And we need to identify how those narratives are no longer serving us. So it's
Yeah.
normal. You're not the only one who feels this way. And once you can kind of normalize it, then you can create a plan to move beyond it.
Hmm.
I think one of the greatest gifts that we have, beyond some of what I said earlier, which is like knowing our why, is a couple other things. One is like growing in our own self awareness.
Hmm.
Like we don't like to lean into what's uncomfortable, but I just want people to do it for a second. If you're like, I hate the feeling, I'm not, like, okay, what exactly did you hate about it?
Hmm.
Like what was it? What was it? Give me some language. Give me some words. What moments? What
Hmm.
was happening to your body? What was happening in the room? What were you trying to say versus what was
Hmm.
actually said? Like what was happening to you physically with your body? Was it moving in certain ways that didn't feel unnatural? Like what
Hmm.
was the scenario? But I think if you can really take some time to dissect instead of saying, I hate that, we got to be more specific, or that was terrifying. No, let's get specific. What exactly about it was? The more specific you can get, the more you can create a game plan to move beyond that, or to identify what is the real fear here so that you can move beyond it. But until you can address those fears, you can't move beyond them.
Hmm.
So as discomforting and uncomfortable as it is, like lean into what is uncomfortable and just really understand it, really try to dissect it. I think that's really helpful for people,
Hmm.
especially early on when they're communicating, to be able
Hmm.
to move beyond their nerves and
Hmm.
move beyond their fears. I think the second thing is, which I'm huge advocate for, but is coaching. I have
Hmm.
received a lot of coaching in my life around communication and a lot of feedback. And
Hmm.
there's some things that people said that I didn't want to hear at times because
Yeah.
it's a little exposing and vulnerable, but it
Hmm.
was so helppful for me. And especially if you're around people who are really for you, they're not trying to tear you down. They see
Yeah.
where you want to go. They see that they see your strengths. They're going to help you amplify your strengths and identify your weaknesses so that you can see them and you can either, get them to a different level, or you can find ways around them, right? But they're really for you. You need people like that. You do need that
Hmm.
kind of trusted feedback and coaching and guidance to help you. Everybody needs it. And I really love the kind of day and age that we're living in now, because there's used to be like, I don't know, when I was a kid, when you talked about coach, weren't you just talking about sports? Like there was very few things we were talking about
Yeah.
receiving coaching and like that.
Hmm.
I love that we live in an era where it's like, do you need life coaching? Do you need leadership
Yeah.
coaching? Do you need communication coaching? Do you need health
Career
coaching
coaching.
and
Yeah.
career coach? I mean, that's amazing. And there are
It
people who
is.
are really good at this. I mean, you want to vet people and you want to, but I really recommend it. Or get in a workshop or get a mentor on the job.
Hmm.
But somebody who can do that for you. There's ways around it too if coaching isn't the right avenue for you right now. But I do think you need that kind of support in your world to help you move beyond those feelings. So know your why, know what you have to contribute, make
Hmm.
sure that you are just self aware so
Hmm.
you can get a better understanding of what exactly you're afraid of so you can move beyond it and have some support and coaching to help you grow.
I love it. I love it. One of the things you first said when we started talking about this is normalize it, which is that self awareness. Like, we don't like to lean into the uncomfortable. We don't want to get psychoanalyzed, so to speak. But I love that, actually. I don't know why people don't like it. I love it. Like, I love digging deep into the whys, like the motivations, the fears, like, why am I feeling this way? And I think, like you said, I really want people to lean into it because that's how you grow. Because if you don't know why things are happening, if you cannot name it, it's difficult to fix it, so to speak, or move
Absolutely.
beyond it. So that's really a good first step to start with, is try to figure out what is happening when you're having these feelings. And this is amazing. And I should also say, I am a very grateful recipient of coaching. I've had many
Mhm.
coaches, and right now, for everyone listening, Nicole is my coach. Full disclosure, she is amazing. She's amazing at
Mhm.
coaching. She's amazing at really bringing out the gems in you. And I am so grateful to be working with her right now. So let's
Mhm.
talk about your coaching
Mhm.
services. I know you have the group Is it a group coaching, like a cohort coaching? Yeah, let's talk about
It
that.
is, yeah. Lead with Love is for Christian female leaders, and it is a combination of a cohort. So there's a shared learning experience over 6 months, once a month, with a small group of women who are also leading in different spaces.
Yeah.
And then there's the one-on-one coaching. So it's not group coaching; it's one-on-one personalized coaching once a month, and that's really what consists of Lead with Love. And I do get asked a lot, like, what kind of leader do I need to be? It's like, there are so many different spaces in which you could be called to lead. So it's like, I really believe mamas are leaders. I believe that coaches and teachers are leaders, just like I believe CEOs are and entrepreneurs are and pastors are. So if you are called to lead and you are leading in some capacity, then Lead with Love is definitely for you. But I love that combo because I think it's an opportunity for women to have this shared experience with others, to have a community around them and support and learn together. And then that one-on-one coaching gets to be very personalized to whatever your goals are in the season. And my passion with Lead with Love is that women would be able to lead in their season from a place of strength and wholeness, not at the sacrifice of their well-being. And I think there's a lot that is being put on a woman's plate and a lot that she has to juggle. And so I want to make sure that women create healthy rhythms for their life, that they create plans, and they are able to clarify even what those next steps are towards their goals, but to do it in a way that's not going to cost them. It's not going to lead to burnout. It's not going to lead to more anxiety or even deeper insecurity, but is going to be one that is led by peace, that is going to help a woman, lead from strength and lead from health, which doesn't always happen, sadly. And then I have communication coaching, which is separate from that. And we've talked a bit about that as well.
Yes. Awesome. I really want people to lean into this. If you need coaching, if there's any area of your life that you feel like you're stuck and you really want to move forward, commit to that. I hope you can find a coach to work with you, and Nicole is a great one, I promise you. So you can check out our website at nicolesmithee.com, right? And I will leave all the links in the show notes for everyone to check it out. Thanks so much, Nicole. Is there anything, just wrapping up this conversation, anything you would like to encourage our audience with?
One thing that occurred to me as I was talking is I'm a coach and I have a lot of experience, but you never arrive. Like I'm still learning like everybody else. And I think it's really important that we always remember that. Like, we have this, I love social media. I have a love-hate relationship with social media is probably what I should say. And the part that I don't like about it is just how easy it is for us to compare ourselves one to another.
Absolutely.
And it's a real dangerous place to live in. So we're all doing great things, but nobody has it all figured out. And I say that as a coach, like, nobody has it all figured out. We're all still learning, growing. I just spoke somewhere this weekend and it was a great experience, but I definitely walked away and was like, oh, you know what? There's a couple things I could do better. And that's okay. I don't think we ever get to a place where it's like, nailed it, 100% perfection. Like, this is this ongoing journey. And so leadership is an ongoing journey. Communication is an ongoing journey. So wherever you are in the journey, praise God for where you're at and be able to own where you're at and embrace where you're at, free of comparison, because that'll take you out. It really will. And I think the people in our world that are meant to inspire us, the enemy would try to use to actually make us feel more insecure because of comparison.
That's a word.
So being able to recognize that and go, I'm going to be inspired by people, but I'm running my own race. And I'm where I am today, and praise God for it. And it's going to look different than somebody else. And we all have room to still grow,
I love that. That's so powerful, Nicole. That is powerful. Thank you for all your insights and wisdom that you shared today. We will take it. I will, and I hope the audience will. We'll take it and run with it and be better people. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a joy today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoy this conversation, please take a moment to follow or subscribe to the podcast. I'd also love your feedback on this episode. You can scroll down on your app and click write a review. I'd love to read your takeaways from this conversation. As always, don't forget to take courage, trust God, and go pursue your big ideas. See you next time. The Driven Introvert is produced by shepack.com and Remy Roy, with support from Candice Zakaria and Aishat Olarewaju. Want to ask a question or share a comment in a future episode? Click on the link in the show notes to record your question in a voicemail. I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Ooh, okay.
Are you ready?
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Just a few of them. All right.
Okay.
What is your favorite season?
Fall. I was torn
You took some time to think about it.
Because spring and fall are like they're so good.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go with fall because my birthday is in fall. So.
Oh, perfect. Fall is my favorite season too. Absolutely. Okay. Describe your style in one word.
Simple. These days, I don't got a lot of time. So it's just got to be simple.
I love it. I feel like I was thinking about this question for myself and I said, gosh, I feel like I would need more than one word because it'll probably be something close to comfortable 20-year-old male. Because I just love putting on jeans and a sneaker.
That's my answer too. That's what I meant most simple. I don't got a lot of time to get ready these days. You know what I'm saying? So.
Oh, I love it. Oh, wow. All right. So apart from your quiet time, what is your favorite thing to do in the morning?
Drink coffee. I just love, it's like not just because I'm addicted and I probably am, but it's like a soothing thing. You know what I mean? It's like the smell of it and it's just like, it's like the ritual of starting the day.
Awesome. Awesome. What is one item that is worth spending more money on?
Skincare. I wish I could tell my 20-year-old self that. Girl,
really? You just started
in your skin. Oh, heck yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's a good one. All right. What will your next book be about?
I think my next book will be around some of the stuff with Lead with Love, I think, just to support female leaders. Yeah, I think that would be it.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to that. If you weren't a coach or a Bible teacher, what profession would you pursue?
I think I would go back into acting. I love it. I love that side of things. And I love movies and I love storytelling.
Did you ever do theater?
I did. That was my background that led me to commercial and TV work in LA. But yeah, I did a lifetime ago when I was a kid and then a young woman. I did that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. I really enjoyed our time together.
Thank you. Me too. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.